Hey guys, welcome back. I feel like it's been so long since I've done a video because so many of the videos of lately that I've posted are ones that I did before and just got around to posting because we've had some really bad weather here in Maryland. We've had a lot of snow, we've had a lot of sub-zero temperatures, and I don't have an indoor. And so my riding's been really inconsistent lately. And when I do have the time to ride or to work with the horses, I don't really feel like it's fair to do a video because they're just inconsistent right now. So what we're going to do today is we're going to switch it up and we're going to talk a little bit about movement and horses, and we're going to do it, inside. I'll post a picture of what my arena looked like 2 days ago, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just not really rideable. So one of the things that I've always said in previous videos is that I wanted to do a little introduction to myself. So I'm Rebecca Douglas. For my profession, I'm actually a acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioner. I have been practicing for 20 plus years. I run my own business and I actually work on both humans and horses. I'm licensed in both. And so I have this, like, whenever I learn something like in humans, then I'll go and I'll learn the equivalent in horses. And whenever I'm expanding my knowledge in one area, then I'm going and I'm applying it to the different species. And so it's really kind of helped me build a lot of knowledge around a lot of different health situations for both humans and horses. And I want to talk a little bit about Chinese medicine because so many people don't really understand how vast it is or how complicated it is or what all that it can do for the individual person or the individual horse. And so I want to talk a little bit about this little side of my board here. So Chinese medicine, we abbreviate that CM, has a couple different branches of it. And so we have what most people know is which is the acupuncture, right? So that's where we're sticking needles into acupuncture points along the body to influence the health of the body in various ways. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically the biggest thing to understand is that there is these chemical and mechanical receptors that are at the acupuncture points, and they can be as vast as that sounds because there's not just one. It's not just a nerve, or it's not just a fascial aspect to it, or a connective tissue aspect, and it's not just blood vessels. The language of Chinese medicine can get quite complicated when we start to talk about it in the lingo of Chinese medicine. But if you want to understand it more from a Western medical standpoint, that is a huge, big lecture in and of itself that we're not going to get into today. But we just understand that there's these chemical and mechanical receptors that are underneath the skin where the acupuncture points are, and by needling them we can get these diverse effects through the body. Most people think of it as pain relief, or they think of it as treating some sort of lameness or something like that, but it has a much broader range of influences on the body than just that. Okay, and so there's also what we call Tui Na, which is Chinese massage therapy. So that's another sort of branch of Chinese medicine that anybody who does acupuncture and has studied Chinese medicine has also had, some exposure, and some of us have gone on and done a lot more exposure to all these branches of Chinese medicine. I put in here, the next one is I call movement, but when we think about, if you think about Indian medicine, movement would be yoga, and in Chinese medicine that would be qigong or tai chi. But the larger group of movement can be extrapolated into other areas, and it just doesn't have to be like, there's no way for us to do, tai chi with our horses, but there is ways to look at movement through the Chinese lens, and then use that as we train our horses. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. The other big thing that people don't understand with Chinese medicine is there's a whole nutritional factor that goes into it. There is Chinese dietary therapy. And basically what that is not only are we looking at nutrition as a whole and holistic nutrition, but we're also looking at what foods would be good for that individual based on their pattern, right? So it's very individualized medicine that way. I will say that holism and holistic has become a big buzzword, and everybody is using that now. And you'll hear medical doctors and all these people talk about, oh, we practice holistic medicine, and they're using it in the way of saying, well, we look at all your body systems. But holistic medicine really is looking at the body, mind, and spirit. And that is not the that is not historically the way that most medicine has worked. You've had to look at some of the ancient medicines for that. Okay, so I just want to kind of make that distinction. But a lot of people don't realize that nutrition is a big deal in Chinese medicine as far as health. There is, oh, I have Twina on here twice. Don't need that twice. There's all these aspects of Chinese medicine, and most people don't understand how the underlying principles of Chinese medicine apply to each one of these. Okay, so once you understand the principles of Chinese medicine and you understand the life view of it as far as how to prevent illness, how to treat illness, and how to live your life in accordance with the with the earth in a way that promotes health. So I had Tweena up here twice because I wasn't paying attention, but the other one I want to mention in here is actually the 5 elements. And because the 5 elements are how to live in balance with nature, and that was always really important to the Chinese in ancient medicine, because they didn't have the ability like we do now to manipulate our environment, meaning they didn't have AC and heat like we do now, and every area that you were in wasn't climate controlled in some way, shape, or form, and they really had to learn how to live with the 5 elements. One of the and that was like the 5 seasons, right? That relates to the 5 seasons. One of the ways that we think about that now, which you've probably heard, is that winter is the time for rejuvenation and rest. And I think about this with even training our horses, and I don't get really upset if I can't train right now, because it is the time for everybody to kind of go internal a little bit and be able to rest and rejuvenate, because when spring comes, all this energy comes with it, both in nature and in our own bodies and in our horse's body. And then that's the time to burst forward into spring and into your spring training. The other one that a lot of people don't realize is there is herbal medicine in Chinese medicine also. So this was, the way of treating internal diseases, and external diseases, but internal problems with, prior to Western medical drugs. The nice thing about that is that a lot of the herbal medicines do not have the side effects that you're going to get with modern medication. So that's Chinese medicine in a nutshell. This is what I do in life, and this is what I do for both humans and horses. And there's a couple other therapies in here that I offer that are sort of offshoots of these, but this is the main chunk. And so I just want to say really quick, because this leads into what we're going to talk about today, and what we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks is this idea of what does this Chinese system actually work with? Well, we know for sure via research that it works with the fascia and the connective tissue. We know that it works with the nerves and the neurochemical responses through the body. We know that it works with the bones. We know that it works with the muscles and tendons and ligaments. We know that it works with organs and organ systems. We know that it works with the immune system, including inflammation. And we also know that it has an effect on the emotions. And when these are in balance, when all of this is in balance, is when we are our healthiest. And it doesn't matter if you are a human or a horse or a dog. When you are in balance, that is when you're healthy. So the preventative side of Chinese medicine is that our goal is to prevent medicine by keeping the body in balance, to prevent illness by keeping the body in balance. And if illness or lameness or anything does occur, that we have these tools to bring the body back into balance. Because ultimately the goal is for the body to heal itself. So we're not looking externally so much as we are looking to give the body what it needs to heal itself. This is holistic medicine. This is Chinese medicine. Okay, how does that play into our horses training? So we think about this idea of movement. And then I want to go up here because there's a couple different things that I think about whenever I'm training around movement. And it comes from this long-winded explanation I just gave you here about Chinese medicine. It becomes because that's always playing in the background of like, how am I going to keep the horse sound? How am I going to train this horse according to principles that will help that horse be the best that they can be, and also train them in a way that's appropriate for their body. And so I look at what I think of when I think of movement. And I'm going to just turn this a little bit so that you can see this board better. So when I think about movement in the horse, right, and that's what we're doing. We're training a horse, we're training movements. Whether you're a dressage rider or a Western rider, or whether you're jumping a jump, you're still training this movement in a horse, no matter what you want them to do. And so when I look at movement, there's a couple things that like really fall into that category. And this is what we're going to look at each one of these in more depth over the next couple weeks. But one, we always think of movement really is that ease, that strength, that flexibility. So when we talk about training horses, we're talking about how can I make them more flexible? How can I make them more balanced? How can I give them the tools to be able to do something in the future that they might not be able to do now? How can I build the strength for that, right? So if I want to think about doing pee-off in the future or jumping higher in the future, what do I do now to set up the foundation for them to be able to do that in the future? So that's like one part where we talk about like how to train to get this ease of movement, to get this strength, to get this flexibility, and then build those building blocks so that they are able to progress up the levels, both in difficulty and in strength. Okay. So then the next thing that we're going to look at over the next couple of weeks is this joy of moving. And I might not go in this order, but this is what I want to talk about. So this joy of moving is something that's really important to me, is that, yes, working is hard. We also know that learning creates frustration. There was this great video I watched the other day, and I actually posted it on my Facebook channel, even though I'm not on Facebook very often. And it was this really great thing about, you have where you are and you have where you want to be in like your knowledge or your skill set. And it's not a linear line. It actually has very many peaks and valleys to get from one place to the next. And that it can be very frustrating for the learner. And that you have to find the comfort in being in that frustrated movement, in that frustrated place. And when we think about that with horses, is that, but eventually you want to get to the end and you want to have the joy of having learned it, of having, built that strength or built that knowledge. And when we think about this with horses, a lot of times we make those peaks and valleys, the time of learning so frustrating for them, worse than it needs to be. because we always have our eyes set on the goal. We're always having our eyes set on the goal. And really, sometimes for the horse's joy of moving, we have to look at training a little bit differently. We're not just looking at that final goal. We're we're embracing where we are in the moment and finding the joy there, and finding that for our horses, because honestly, if they chose, they probably wouldn't be doing what we were asking them to do, even though we know ultimately it is better for their health to be moving and to be doing something than sitting on the couch and being a couch potato. But we also have then a duty to them to make it as rewarding as we possibly can. And that is something that, sometimes I struggle with, but it's always a goal of mine to be like, how can I have the horse enjoy this process as much as I enjoy it, and it not just be about me, what I want, my ego, what I want to accomplish, and how fast I want to get there. Okay, so that's the joy of moving, and we'll talk more about that in the future. So then the other part of movement that I always talk about is correct use of self, because that's what we're really going for. We're going for the horse's body to be able to use themselves in an efficient way, in a way that is very correct, in a way that will keep them sound, in a way that they find the work, even when it's challenging, to be easy, that it's not over challenging to them. So that's the correct use of self. So we'll use in my videos, we'll use a lot of exercises that help the horse's body to discover that on their own instead of forcing that. And there is ways that we can biomechanically help them figure that out. But there's also ways where you kind of want to set them up and let them discover it for themselves and let them build the body awareness of how they got there themselves, and it not just be because we forced them there with some piece of equipment, or that they're, I always talk about it in the way of self-organizing. I want to let the horses figure out how to self-organize a little bit. I think that one is empowering to them, and it goes back to that sort of holistic way of looking at life, but it also, I think, is the best way for them to learn something and it really sticks, right? If someone tells you to do something, it doesn't quite stick. Perfect example. You're driving to somebody's house, you've never been there before. Your friend is in the driver's seat, or in the passenger seat, and your friend is telling you how to get there. It's just like the GPSs, right? That could be, you don't learn it as well as if you're having to figure it out on your own. And that's like this whole correct use of self. Like, I want them to self-organize. I want them to learn how to use their body themselves in a way that makes their movement more, I guess I want to say better, but then we'd have to define better. But that's sort of the idea. So the next one, which is a huge, big one that I haven't really talked that much about, is this whole idea of brain mapping. So science has shown us that novel movements are really good for us to set up their neuron pathways to be able to do more things with our body. Meaning, like, if you always do the same thing, you only learn how to do that. But if you're doing different things all the time, then your like neuroplasticity of your brain is so much more robust. And this is true with horses, that like, if you're always in an arena in the perfect footing and it's the same exercises, their actual neuroplasticity is quite small. Their ability to adapt to different things becomes very restricted. But if you're out there doing different exercises on different terrains, if things are variable, they actually develop the brain mapping to be able to handle that. They develop this neuroplasticity. They develop this ability to handle different body sensations and different, because it's not just like they learn how to like stabilize themselves in sand and over rocks and walking over a log and on a hill And, and all those things make the ability for the brain to perform that movement in a biomechanically better way and protect themselves from lameness issues than if you always only did it like in the perfect sand, in the perfect environment. And so this whole idea of like being able to build that robustness into your training system is just golden. It's just golden. And it also really helps with horses that may struggle in an area of using their body correctly in a certain way, meaning let's say they don't, they kind of leave their butt behind and they don't engage their hind legs, or they have a weak thoracic sling and they aren't able to like raise in the withers and reach out to the bridle. They want to invert themselves and drop the back. And like this kind of stuff is super important whenever you're dealing with rehabilitation or lameness or overcoming a problem like, if your horse has kissing spine, well, what can you do to really have a robust system that can handle a bunch of different things and still keep that core strength, right? So it's just not the core strength and just not that ability to stabilize the spine in the perfect environment, but also when the environment may not be that perfect. And then when you get to the perfect environment, boom, it's super easy for them to do it. The very last sort of part that goes into movement is proprioception. And so a lot of these kind of play with one another because proprioception is the ability to be able to perceive your environment, perceive where your body is in that environment, and then to influence your body in that environment. So as riders, we're dealing with this all the time when we have to think about, well, what is the seat bone doing and where is it weighted, or where do I want it to be, or how can I follow the horse better, or how can I half halt better? So we're doing this all the time, and so are the horses, because they're having to feel what we're doing, and then they're having to change themselves, and they're having to perceive that. And they're also having to perceive the change that they made, at the same time perceiving maybe changes in the environment or changes in the footing or changes in the, are we going uphill? Are we going downhill? Are we in grass? Are we jumping over a fence? Are we, whatever. So that proprioception is really interesting. The proprioception comes right back down here to the Chinese medicine, because a lot of times when horses get injured, a lot of these areas suffer. And one of the things that we are able to do with any sort of acupuncture, Tui Na movement, is we're really helping this proprioception and this brain mapping. And we're really helping them, what the body will do a lot of times when it gets injured, and this is just straight up physical therapy, is that the body will set up protective mechanisms so that it's almost like the body says, okay, we have to like not use this part because we have to protect it because it's injured. And the body will, long after it's healed, the body will not tell itself that, oh, okay, it's okay, you can start using this again. And that's where a lot of physical therapy comes in, because they slowly teach either the horse or the human, if you've gone through physical therapy yourself, that, hey, in these small increments, you can start using this again. So say you had shoulder surgery, you're not going to just like wake up one day and be like, okay, I have full use of my shoulder again. Your body's going to be like, no, you don't. And here's why, right? It was injured and then you had surgery and now we have scar tissue and our proprioception is off and we've lost some of our brain mapping of how to use our shoulder, because that gets lost very quickly. And, we don't have our correct use of self anymore because we're protecting it. And, we have lost our strength and our flexibility and our ease of movement. And you have to come in with both training and sometimes body work to say, hey, now you can start using this, and this is how. A lot of what we do in, acupuncture and in Chinese medicine and this body work stuff and even craniosacral therapy is to give the body those signals that turn it back on again. Okay, So that's getting really long-winded, but it's probably one of the longer videos I've done. But I just have one more piece that I want to talk about, and that's this definition of soundness. So for me, when I think about what does soundness mean, it's not just lack of lameness. So it's not just lack of a head nod or, asymmetry of all four limbs, or it's not, because sometimes we talk about the swing phase versus the landing phase, and it's not just that. When I think of soundness, I think of a more holistic view of soundness than just, well, he's no longer nodding his head, or, there's no longer any, stiffness to his gait. I look at it from a different perspective, and I'll just read this to you in case you can't read it. Soundness to me is ability for the horse to move with ease over varied terrain in a biomechanically efficient way while benefiting from the movement in body, mind, and spirit. And so what that does is this definition takes into all of this. We know that there are certain chemicals that get produced when we're doing movement that actually give us a feeling of, some people call it a high, but it just gives us a good feeling. And that is not just, that is a very specific kind of movement. We'll talk about that in the future. And so we really want the horse to have the ease, the strength, and the flexibility to be able to go over varied terrain with an ease of movement. And we want them to be biomechanically using themselves efficiently while benefiting from the movement to bring for it to bring benefit to the body, the mind, and the spirit. So when I think about riding, this is what I'm trying to do. And that's why I wanted to kind of set the time aside right now while riding is a little iffy for me, and really articulate this out for you so that you understand where I'm coming from when I talk about how I use my body the way that I do, or what I want this horse to do and how I want him to do it. It's because my goal is this. This is my goal, this soundness principle. And I want to do that while I train for something. Like, I want to be able to train and accomplish something and have a goal, but not when I'm sacrificing soundness. And that is hard, right? Because horses can't always talk to us and tell us how they're feeling that day, or how they're feeling about this phase of their training. Or, this is what makes training hard, is how to keep them sound in this aspect, and and not become stagnant by standing still, not to give up training because we're going through a bad patch, and things might be difficult and we're struggling in one of these areas, but and not to say, well, my horse shouldn't have to ever struggle with anything, or so therefore is he just going to be a couch potato? He's going to be a pet? I don't think that's the right answer, because soundness does not happen. These things do not happen if the horse is just out in a field. They will not necessarily, keep all of this going if they're just left to their own devices. And so for us to have this soundness of body, mind, and spirit, not only maybe we have to look at Western med or Chinese medicine, but we also have to look at how we're training. So that's kind of the big picture I wanted to talk about. And then we'll kind of dissect this in future videos for these little pieces that I think are gems that to me have made the biggest difference in the way that I train and why I train the way that I do, and really the biggest difference between me and probably other riders. And it comes down to my training there. So thanks, guys. I know that was a lot today. That was a lot. And I know that sometimes it's really boring to sit here and watch someone talk on a screen. But this is really important. It's really important. So I hope you enjoy this part of the series. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.